So those days it was like my questioning mind, okay, why is that some kids get so bad and some kids get dengue and are completely fine. So and those are the things I really wanted to explore.
No one could have, certainly normal people like us would have not expected something like COVID to come up. But is that something that was on your radar perhaps after SARS and stuff?
Yeah, I mean it was on everybody's radar. So you would have seen this with COVID. I mean when one country detects a variant and then the countries start closing their borders, it's already too late.
Yeah, and we didn't go to school to study.
No, I didn't go to school to study. It's the wrong thing to say.
but maybe we shouldn't tell our children that. But suddenly with COVID-19, you were thrust into like the public eye, suddenly you're right front and center, and people may not always be very kind also.
But we have to understand that COVID is here to stay.
Right.
Okay, it's not going anywhere.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Debrief with me, Roel Raymond. Today I have with me somebody I admire very much, somebody I'm very happy to have on my show. It's taken a while to get this very busy person onto the Debrief, but very happy to have her, Professor Neelika Malavige. Thank you for coming today.
My pleasure to be here.
So Professor, I want to start with, I know that lots of people see you as in the forefront, especially now because of COVID-19 and stuff like that. But let's just talk about your past initially, very, very briefly. Where did you go to school? You studied in Sri Lanka, yes? Yeah,
yes,
initially?
It's like this. I've been to 5 schools. Okay, so, and so because my parents had to go overseas for studies, I started my primary education in the UK, like first 3 years. Then I was in Anuradhapura Balika Mahavidyalaya for 3 years. Then in St. Anthony's, Kolpiti for like 6 months. Then to Devi. So in UK I was in 2 schools. Then I went to Anuradhapura for 3 years. Then I went to St. Anthony's for 6 months, and then to Devi and finished off my schooling. Yes.
So I mean that makes me feel that you're kind of now as an adult you must be used to changing.
Yes,
that doesn't upset you as much, because as a child those changes may have affected you.
I mean yes, definitely, because change was very that's what happened.
Were you always academic? Were you like into into books and studies from the time you were small?
Not at all. I don't think my report cards say that.
We have hope, people. We have hope.
Yeah, I mean it would be nice if my report card said that. But in Anuradhapura and in the UK, I mean in the UK of course it's not academic at all. The schools they are not like that. Okay. In Anuradhapura also it was one of the best experiences. I have to speak about my school in Anuradhapura. So it was learning under trees, outdoors, and it was a lot of skills training, like what kids are supposed to do, rather than very academic. And I had a lot of fun in Anuradhapura. And then when it came to Devi, that was a bit more academic. But I was doing a lot of sports. Right. And in my first few years at Devi, my class positions were like 13, 15, things like that. You see. Yeah. So that I was doing a lot of sports as well in Devi.
Yeah. So do you think it's your sports that has given you? We were discussing grit before, because even in your career, there's a lot of not giving up that takes you to where you are right now. So and you're balancing parenthood, you're balancing so many things. Is it that, or what is it that makes you such a tenacious person, honestly?
Okay, so it's like this. I think it again comes, it's several factors. First of all, my father has always said that if there's a will, there is a way. I mean that's a very normal saying. But he sort of made me understand that if you want to do something, you can. I mean, it's simple as that. If you want to do something, just do it. But when I went to UK, like as a child, so I started school when I was like 5 years old. and I was bullied a lot. You see, I was the only Asian child in school, and those days it was a thing that if you're Asian, so I was bullied a lot, and I think that's, and I didn't have any friends because nobody wanted to be a friend of this dark colored child. So I was bullied a lot and all that. So that sort of brought a lot of grit to I think that helped in that way, although it was not a pleasant experience. I was so happy to get away from there. And Anuradhapura was such a fantastic place, but I think from childhood it was there that
not give up and
not
just push through, no?
And my brother also played a role. I mean, he's younger than me, but he would always fight with me. So
so you learned the skills.
Yes. So and because he didn't have a brother, I think he wanted me to be the brother that he didn't have, rather than the sister.
So you had a lot of rough and tumble play with your brother.
A lot of.
That's good. That's good. So sibling wise, just your brother and you? Or?
I have a sister who's very younger than both of us. Yes.
And your parents were both doctors as well?
Yes.
So any pressure from them to become a doctor? Was that?
No, not at all. I mean, they didn't have any such pressure. But of course, I saw how they cared for patients, and so that's why I wanted to be a doctor. But that was not my sort of initial dream. I wanted to be a scientist, but then, you know, those are just childhood dreams. Like people wanted to be astronauts, like you have little kids wanting to be astronauts, but you can't really call that a dream because it's sometimes difficult to achieve to be an astronaut. So it was one of those things that me wanting to be a scientist was like somebody wanting to be an astronaut, not possible. Like it didn't seem possible, you see. But my parents were doctors, and I saw how much they help people, and so I went on to be a doctor. But after getting through medical school and during internship, so I got the opportunity to get involved in research, and even before getting into doing internship, especially I was doing pediatrics for my internship, and that was the days when dengue started sort of coming up in Sri Lanka, and we had 2 children dying, and that was devastating to have 2 kids. I mean, they just died, and that was sad. And there were like 4 or 5 kids who just made it, I mean, without dying. And it was always like, okay, and there were some kids who got dengue and were completely fine. So those days, it was like my questioning mind, okay, why is that some kids get so bad and some kids get dengue and are completely fine? So, and those are the things I really, you know, wanted to explore. And then I joined University of Sri Jayawardenepura. I studied in Colombo. I joined University of Sri Jayawardenepura, and because I was an academic staff member, I was able to apply for scholarships, and I got a Commonwealth scholarship to go to Oxford. And when I actually went there, that's when I understood, okay, I finally able to do what I want to do, and I was right from the beginning. This is me.
Who you wanted to be, a scientist, basically.
Yeah, scientist, and that's been no turning back since then.
Just to ask you about your experience at Oxford, I mean, that's a huge thing. First, I have to say that's a huge achievement. But what was your experience like there? I'm assuming at that age, even the kids there they're no longer kids first, and they're more accepting. So was your experience there more positive than when you were a child?
Oh yes, I mean things were very, very, very different, because this is like me like 5 to 7 years old, and me like almost, you know, 30 years old. So when I went there, so the world had changed a lot, and Oxford is a very international place, and just to, I mean, we know that Oxford is Oxford, everybody knows what it is, but it's that because how people care for each other, help out each other, and without expecting anything back. I mean, they just help each other and then get on to do the best. So when they try to do the best, is by being better than others, by not suppressing others. So that's
the environment to grow.
There's an environment to grow.
And that's not something we see very much of here, except for, like you were saying, in Anuradhapura, where you all had that sort of.
Yes. So I think a lot of people are afraid. I mean, there are people who want to go forward, and I mean, a lot of people want to sort of. People have different definitions of succeed, but let's say progress in their career. They think that they can't go there if other people are also, you know, like going to be there, then that inhibits them growing. so they want to sort of, they feel a little bit insecure. So I think that's why they don't realize by actually helping others to do their best, then others would also help you. It's a two-way process.
Correct.
And in the end, everybody gets better and everybody develops.
Yeah, so it's not an individualistic kind of way of looking at things.
Yes.
Right. So now I wanted to again ask you, taking it back to the family situation, are you the only doctor in the family, in the sense from your siblings?
No, my younger sibling also she's a child psychiatrist.
Right. So this doctor thing runs in the family, whether you like it or not.
Yes, I'm afraid so. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So your parents, did they meet in university? Is
yes,
that how?
Yes,
yeah. And you and your husband was also a doctor.
Yes.
How did you all meet? University.
Yeah. So he's in my senior batch.
Okay.
So we are in the same body group. Like there's a junior body group.
Okay.
So in the sense you do dissections in the first year.
Okay.
So while the junior body group dissect a particular area of the human body, the senior body group dissect a different area of the same body, you see. And so then
he was there at that point.
Yeah.
This is in Colombo.
Yes,
University,
this is in Colombo.
Right? So that's where it started. And your daughter is now 19. Is she by any chance heading in the doctor?
Yes,
she is. Okay.
Yeah, but it's like this. I mean, she has open mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's great because see, there's a lot more that now, let's say the younger generation, your daughter, will also bring the wealth of knowledge and experience that you all have. Because it's not, I'm not saying that people ought or ought not to perpetuate, but there's also a wealth of information that you can bring through the experiences of your parents with you. So she's at this point, I suppose she's just doing something general. She hasn't decided what she's most interested in.
She's in medical school.
Okay, so does she know she wants to do immunology or anything?
No. I mean, she just started.
Just started. Okay. So let's talk about. You said you started with COVID, with dengue. No one could have, certainly normal people like us would have not expected something like COVID to come up. But is that something that was on your radar perhaps after SARS and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was on everybody's radar. Okay. I mean, people who are in that field, because all the ingredients were there for it to happen. So everything was right for pandemics to happen, and there was a lot of pandemic preparedness going on. So actually, we are a part of this US organization which was planning for the pandemic preparedness called the Centers for Research in Emerging Infectious Diseases. Okay. So one of those centers is A2 CARES, which is arboviral surveillance, and we had so there was this grant scheme, and we had already been applied, and people were getting prepared for the next pandemic. It's just that they didn't think it would, like they were thinking like, okay, maybe in a year or two, not it just came in a little bit earlier than people thought.
Yeah, that's impressive, because I think in the mass, with the masses or with the layman, of course none of us expected this. Came like completely out of left. And I think for people like me, even I didn't have much experience with SARS or any of those. So for a lot of us, COVID was the first pandemic that we experienced. And you said something about the conditions, all right? What kind of conditions in general? Curiosity now.
So if you look back the past 10 years, I mean, there have been a lot of viruses suddenly causing threats to humans, like Zika. I mean, it had been there since 1950s, but suddenly it emerged and caused havoc in Latin America. We know, like pregnant women getting all these abnormal babies. And there was Ebola, again causing quite a bit of a large outbreak and spreading to some areas around Africa as well. So it's because we are encroaching in the wildlife habitat. So we are cutting down forests, we are taking their land. So then there's too much human animal interaction that usually doesn't happen. So one thing is by deforestation, the other thing is by wet markets. So in wet markets you will have various animals who are naturally not close together, like let's say a snake and a bat or something, like who in the natural habitat aren't close together. So then the viruses jump between them and then jump to humans as well. So all of that was happening. And also the other reason is if we take like 1,000 years ago, if one tribe got some infection, it would only affect that tribe. I mean, it wouldn't spread. But now, because of international travel, I mean, something just travels so fast. So you would have seen this with COVID. I mean, when one country detects a variant and then the countries start closing their borders, it's already too late, because by the time it's been detected, it's spread everywhere. So so this is why this border closure thing is not practical, and even in Sri Lanka we saw that these provinces were closed, which was again, so it doesn't, in the modern day, it doesn't really, you can't stop it.
Out of curiosity, I'm just saying, and this was for many of us, like I said, a wake-up call, right? Like, this is the first time we've dealt with something, first time certainly in my experience that we've dealt with something. I know that your expertise and your focus has been on the medical side of things, but in terms of policy, I'm surely going forward you will be able to give some kind of policy direction as well, right? Do you suppose after we recover from COVID there'll be a lessons learned kind of, how the policies were perhaps good or not good? Will there be an evaluation, you think?
So it's like this. I mean, this was, as I said, all the scientists working on this area knew that a pandemic was coming, but of course the policymakers in all countries in the world were not that convinced, so enough funds were not put in it. Now if you look at a war situation, let's say there's a terrorist threat coming into the country, if you don't strengthen your intelligence, you're going to be, like in a terrible mess. So in all countries, all countries, I would say, they were strengthening their military intelligence and so on, and their military power to deal with a terrorist threat. But very little funding and money went into intelligence of this type of, this is also intelligence, I mean, detecting something coming up, monitoring what is happening in animals, because as I said, there's a lot of human animal interaction, this One Health approach. So when you don't pump enough funds into that sort of intelligence, then you get threats from those. So I think globally, people, most governments have learnt a lesson and are pumping funds into strengthening that sort of intelligence, because I think everybody understood this unseen things was causing huge threat, not just to human life, like it's not just the deaths, the hospitalization, severe disease, but the livelihoods, the economy, the social impact, the psychological impact. It was just devastating. So just within a few months. So rather than, I mean, apart from strengthening your military, when countries forget about strengthening the science part of things, then you can get into difficulties. So I think that's the important things that all countries would have to consider.
Right, but that's very interesting, because again, my perspective is always a layman's perspective, and from a layman's perspective, we're happy to forget the virus. Things are getting better. Let's just move on with life.
Yeah, I think that is not a bad approach. Okay, it might be a controversial. It's not a controversial. I mean, it might feel controversial to you, but we have to understand that COVID is here to stay.
Right.
Okay, it's not going anywhere. Okay. So we right now have Omicron, and there's a huge wave going on in Sri Lanka and in rest of the world. And we know that this Omicron version 1 came, and now Omicron version 2. I mean, that's easier for you to understand, I think. The upgraded version, more transmissible upgrade version of Omicron is now spreading against in South Africa and rest of the world. So, and we've got it here as well. So, I mean, it will keep on going. And what you need to understand is, this is it. So,
and we just should get used to it, but at the same time,
I mean, used to it in the sense, you can't just forget it. You getting used to it is not forgetting about it. So now, rather than the beginning of the pandemic, I mean, somebody can ask then, why did we do all these things for 2 years and suffer so much? Why didn't we just deal with it in the beginning? In the beginning, we didn't have vaccines. So the playing fields are not the same as the beginning. We've got vaccines which are very effective. So data coming from everywhere in the world shows that after you get those 3 vaccines, the 2 doses plus the booster, if you do get COVID, I mean, you're going to be fine.
Right. That's awesome.
Yes. So yes, I mean, if you're going to be so everything, you can live with it, provided that you get the adequate protection, and then you're going to be fine.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, that going forward, governments start investing more in intelligence and medical intelligence.
Medical intelligence, yes, yeah.
So that's very important. Yeah, so Professor, what, now COVID-19 came unexpectedly to people like us, and of course it disrupted many things for school children especially, right? Especially the younger ones. I feel that they didn't get to socialize. Socializing is a great part of like learning to live with other people and stuff like that. So they are just getting into that, and of course older children, who are in their teenagers, all of them had their school life disrupted. Now in my time, my disruption was due to the war. If there was a disruption, occasionally there were bombs that went off in Colombo, but schools didn't shut down. Just very occasionally, I remember there were times schools shut down. In your time, this is during the JVP period, you were quite young at that point. Can you just tell me what it was like, your memories like going to school during that time?
Yeah, so I mean it's really sad that COVID disrupted school education because UNICEF has declared, I mean after studying what COVID does to children, the disease severity and also the impact of closing schools, is always like weighing what is best for the children, isn't it? So, so UNICEF has declared that schools should be the last to close and the first to open. Right. And of course, at this situation when there are plenty of vaccines, there's actually no need to close schools at all. I mean that's out of the question. But coming back to the question about were there any school disruptions in our time years, because there was a civil war happening in the 1988, 1989, the years I was doing my O-levels, and we were actually, schools were closed for a year.
Oh really? That's a long time.
That's a long time, a year. And that was when we didn't have social media, you see. We didn't have computers, we didn't have internet, and if you wanted to talk to your friend, you had to lift up that phone, you know, and dial and say hello, you see. And so there was no online school when there were no computers, and there were 2 channels on the television.
I can imagine.
And it was not 24-hour television, 2 hours television. But then of course, when we were young, we did a lot of other things, like we were not anywhere, we hadn't known internet and stuff. So we read, we played. So I think that 1 year, I don't know, that 1 year didn't do a terrible lot of damage to a lot of kids if you ask the kids during that year. But this time I think it's not just 1 year, but a very prolonged school closure. And that's quite sad. And these social interactions, so coming to social interactions, those days all those schools were closed, we did have a lot of social interactions. We would play, that's what kids did with the neighbors and everybody those days, but now kids and families are very isolated. So I think apart from the huge problem with the education, socialization, kids didn't get a chance to socialize. And as far as I am concerned, which is completely not from an educational point of view, this is as a me going to school point of view, and also me as a mother point of view, not as academic. So what I'm saying is not politically right. But I think the main reason kids should go to school and do go to school is to socialize.
100%. No, I agree with you there. With that, I mean, we didn't go to school to study.
No. I didn't go to school to study. It's a wrong thing to say. but
maybe we shouldn't tell our children that. But
I do say open it and my children.
We went to play. We went because we could cut class and hide in the gym.
Yes, I mean that's exactly what we did in school.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I guess in time we'll know the psychological impacts of all of this and stuff, right? I just also wanted to ask you, Professor, now you have always anyway in your academic circles been a bit of a star, as far as I know. You've won awards.
I don't know about that, yes.
From my point of view, it seems like you have won awards from a young point, from the time you were in in university and stuff like that. But suddenly with COVID-19, you were thrust into like the public eye, you know, suddenly you're right front and center, and people may not always be very kind also. So how has the transition been from being within your academic circles to now suddenly you're a public figure, people recognize you, people sometimes, we've talked about how, you know, even the media publishes mistruths and stuff like that. How have you dealt with that?
Oh yes, so that was a terrible shock, I'll be very honest, okay. So because I'm a very, very private person, and I was minding my own business and, you know, doing what we've been doing for a long time. So when COVID came along, COVID is just another thing. I mean, it's not transmitted like dengue, but I mean, COVID is just another thing, right? I mean, another virus. So it was very natural for us to start working on it. and if you go back right to January 2020, there weren't many labs in Sri Lanka doing PCR. Okay. So and when we can do all that, when I know that we can do all that, and if we didn't step in at that time point, that I would be really ashamed of myself, and I think our whole team would feel really ashamed that they could have helped the country, but they didn't. And the last thing you want to do is to feel ashamed of yourself, right? So that's why we stepped in, starting from PCR, and you know, like the questions that I had when I was doing my internship in my mid-20s, like why do some people get severe dengue, some kids are fine, some kids died. So I thought, I mean, COVID is the same, isn't it? I mean, some people are completely fine, some people, and it's true that older people get more severe disease, but not all old people get severe disease, right? Yes. I mean, let's talk about that too. Just because you're old, like there are enough and more 80-year-olds who got COVID and were completely fine, right? So it's not just age thing. So we had the same questions. There were lots of things to study on COVID, and at the same time, and we were doing genomic sequencing, the stuff we could do, and then we were sort of thrown in the deep end of the pool. Like, okay, this is media, talk to media, and then like, okay, I mean, I've been talking to medical students because that's a part of my job, you know, like teaching, and which I really love, but media was completely different, and that was frightening. Media is absolutely frightening because it's a completely different ball game.
Polite.
No, not very polite. Yes. And it's not nice to be recognized when you sort of. So I am sometimes recognized when I. And so this is one real big reason I love the mask.
Yes, me too, actually. I love the fact that you can hide your expressions, that you can hide a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So the transition, anyway, I think you rode it quite well, and now you're on Twitter and on social media, which is also very nice to see. Do you believe that academics should use these social platforms to engage with audiences more?
Yes, definitely. I mean, because if you talk about Twitter, I mean, I follow a lot of academics in other countries, and I learn a lot from them. So Twitter is the reason I'm on Twitter is to follow them, so that I learn from them. You see, so that's the whole purpose of me being on Twitter. And then most of the stuff I retweet is to record for me to later download, because you know, like so that's why I mostly retweet. But then I don't tweet anymore because of what the media does. So earlier I used to sort of give my opinion about things, but it looks like media doesn't know how to handle things, which was disappointing. So now I don't put anything on, you know, like my unless resharing or retweeting. I never, you know, like give my opinion on Twitter.
So what was the incident? I remember something recently happening where you actually publicly then made a statement saying the media is misquoting you.
Oh yeah, I think it was several. I mean, it was just not one incident. It was going on, and it's not that I was upset that the media was misquoting me. When the media was misquoting me, they were giving the wrong messages to the general public, which were harmful. Okay, otherwise, if they were just misquoting me and that was all right. But the misquoted messages were bad. So the way it was interpreted, that was bad. That was giving the wrong message to the public, and if they believed, the public believed that actually I said that would be a really wrong message and going to the public. So this is why I put a statement out saying, you know, because you don't want to communicate the wrong thing to the public. So I wanted to correct that.
And with your interaction now with the media in this last 2 years, what is your take on it? In the sense, what I want to know is, do you think sometimes the media does it on purpose, viciously, or do you think it's because they're just not organized enough, not professional enough? What is your just
so there are many reasons. It's not just one. So it's like calling somebody, is this person a good person or a bad person? Nobody is a good person or a bad person. I mean, some people can be more good than bad, but you know, this is like a very extensive thing. So when it comes to media, sometimes it's purely because they don't understand. They don't know that they don't understand. And it's not just media; it's a lot of people. So if you look at these COVID times, there are a lot of COVID experts who just give out a lot of advice about COVID. I'm not talking about doctors who are suddenly immunologists, not doctors, you see, lay people, immunologists, epidemiologists, talking about vaccine side effects. I mean, look at what, I mean, we have boosters now for every single individual in Sri Lanka, and people are not taking them because of the myths being spread through social media by these experts.
Yeah. Yeah, you see a lot of them on Twitter also.
Yes, you saw these experts. So they are doing an awful lot of damage. So likewise, in media, some people, some of them have very good intentions, but they don't actually understand. And I think if you take media in like some other countries, if you're writing a medical article or a scientific article, you would get a science writer.
Correct.
Okay, who has a scientific background or a medical background to write that, so that it's correct, because it's bad to sort of give the wrong message to public, because that causes a lot of damage. So I think the main problem is a lot of things that are written or said in media, mainstream media and social media, is not done by scientific writers. So it's actually a misunderstanding that they don't actually understand what is said, and they don't understand that they don't understand.
Yeah. I get it. Now, I wanted to ask you, I asked you this question for your perspective, because this is a conversation that's happening within the media circles as well, because like you said, there are a lot of issues, and primary among them is the fact that journalists are not really trained. We don't have trained science writers, trained health writers. It just sort of is whatever story comes up, you're assigned. So these, as a result, I mean, see, I guess in normal times, it doesn't have as much an impact as something like this. You know, when COVID comes up, misreporting or not understanding the real story can actually have serious impacts. What I also want to know is, have you ever had any personal interactions with any anti-vaxxers, and how did that go?
So personal interactions is like this. I mean, there are people sending me emails, WhatsApp messages, and you know, Facebook messages I don't read, but all these things. Anti-vaxxers, you know, saying that it's not bad. I mean, right now nobody sent me during the past month or so, but that I will, you know, burn in, you know, hell or something like that will happen, or you know, all these things, or something which some anti-vaxxers with actually good intention, like, okay, I mean, you're if you do this, you know, you're destroying the world, and so it's just like that. And I think a lot of anti-vaxxers may have called me, but I only answer known numbers. And if it's like a person who wants to contact me, if I don't answer, they will send me a message, so I ring that person back. So a lot of people may have called me as well, but I don't answer unknown numbers.
I mean, that's sad to hear. I didn't know that you were getting like hate messages. Like, that's not very nice. It can't be a pleasant experience.
No, I don't mind at all.
You've got used to it. It's like whatever.
No, I mean, I've never minded anything like that. So it is nothing to do with COVID or the media. I mean, it's been like that throughout. I mean. I don't mind what people say.
Right, that's nice. That's nice.
So it's perfectly fine.
Right. I had such an interesting conversation with you. I'm going to cut it short simply for times, because of time restrictions. But I'd love to have you back on, Professor, so we can speak in more detail. And learned a lot during this conversation. And I really hope. I mean, what I said at the start also, when I said that you were somebody I admire, and I meant that because there are lots of young people, and especially within the media and the public also, you're seen as a figure that's accepted, acceptable, loved. I'm sure there are haters, everywhere there are haters, but mostly
I don't mind,
somebody,
exactly.
Mostly you're a beloved figure in the media, somebody who's seen as very practical and sensible, and I'm glad we could have you here. So I wish you well, and I hope you do better and better. You know, even in the media, even in front of the camera, you do better and better.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.